Welcome back to the Deep Dive, everybody. Today, we're diving headfirst into the world of sales. Specifically, what really drives success when it comes to engaging with those customers. And for this deep dive, we're breaking down a classic, really, spin selling, which, it's been around for a while, but this framework's really all about asking the right questions the right way to kind of unlock those sales wins. So our goal today is to kind of pull out the core practical insights from spin selling, things you can actually use right away to boost your business, to boost your sales.
Yeah, exactly. We're going to kind of debunk some of those old school sales myths, like that super aggressive closing is everything. We've looked at the data, and spin selling shows us a much smarter approach. It's all about really getting a deep understanding of what your customer wants, what their needs are.
So I guess to kind of map out our conversation, we've pulled out 7 key areas from the spin selling methodology.
Sounds good.
So number 1, we're going to look at what truly drives sales success. Number 2, the power of the investigating stage, really understanding the customer's world. Number 3, how to actually master those espion questions. The situation, the problem, the implication, the need-payoff questions.
Right.
Then we'll move into demonstrating your capability the right way so it resonates.
Okay.
Proactively preventing objections, because no one likes those.
No.
Then, how to craft those super effective sales call openings that grab attention. And finally, how to actually turn all this theory into practical action. We don't just want the knowledge, we want to use it.
Exactly. Make it work for you.
So let's jump right into the first point, understanding what actually drives sales success. It's almost surprising when you see what the research says. We've always been told, closing is key, handling objections like a pro, even, just asking a few probing questions. Those are the keys, especially for those really big, important sales. But the research behind spin selling kind of throws a wrench in that thinking. It's not so simple.
It's not, is it? It really challenges some of those long-held beliefs, like you said, that closing is the be-all and end-all. In those larger deals, those major accounts, it's actually deep customer understanding that really makes the difference. So that initial study where they observed, nearly 100 sales calls, it showed those classic techniques we often focus on weren't the silver bullet. There was something else going on, something more fundamental.
And that's something else, that kind of secret sauce. It's the ability to really get deep, deep into the customer's needs.
Exactly.
Through asking really smart, insightful questions.
Smart questioning.
And it sounds pretty simple, but when you see the top salespeople in action, they're in a whole different league when it comes to prioritizing this. So for you, the listener, understanding what really moves the needle in sales, it can have huge benefits for your business, right? Imagine you can refocus your entire team, get them laser focused on the activities that actually have the biggest impact.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you think about it, instead of just trying to, slam dunk every sale with the perfect closing line, you can train your team to really dig deep, understand what makes your customer tick, what keeps them up at night, what their real challenges are.
Right, because when you really understand those drivers, you can actually improve the ROI of your sales training programs.
Yeah.
So you're not wasting resources on tactics that might not be as effective. You're putting your money where it matters, developing those crucial questioning skills.
Exactly.
Which brings us to another point.
Yeah.
It leads to better alignment with your customers, especially in those larger, more complex deals.
Right, because they're not just looking for a salesperson at that point. They're looking for a partner, someone who can help them navigate their challenges, their problem.
They want problem solving.
Yeah, not just somebody trying to push a product on them.
They want a consultant, almost. Someone who can guide them through it. So let's flip the coin, right? What happens if you miss this whole idea, if you don't understand these fundamental drivers of success in sales? What's the downside?
Well, think about it. If your organization's still stuck on those traditional, maybe even outdated tactics, the ones that research is showing aren't the primary drivers anymore, you're likely going to keep seeing those frustrating sales results. It's like, trying to run a marathon in flip-flops. You're just not equipped for it.
Right. And it's not just the missed opportunities. You're potentially wasting so much time and money on training programs that just aren't moving the needle. And, I think what's worse is you could be damaging those customer relationships, right? If your team's out there pushing for those hard closes when the customer's actually looking for a thoughtful, problem solver, it creates a mismatch.
Exactly. They're going to feel pressured, misunderstood. It's not going to lead to a good outcome. And it's fascinating to see how this plays out in the real world. When you look at companies in the USA who really get this, who've embraced this new way of thinking, they're seeing impressive results.
Yeah, let's give some examples.
So think about those enterprise software giants, companies like Salesforce. Their top-performing salespeople, they don't just focus on the features of their software. They really dig deep to understand the client's overarching business challenges and position their solutions as strategic enablers. It's a much more collaborative approach.
It's about understanding the big picture.
Yeah, it's not just about the transaction, it's about building a partnership. And then you have those consulting powerhouses like McKinsey, right? Their entire reputation is built on deeply understanding and diagnosing client issues, and they do that through really rigorous questioning before they even think about recommending a solution.
Right. Like they're almost detectives.
Exactly, they're gathering all the clues, all the information before they even try to solve the mystery. And even in industries you might not expect, like heavy industry, like General Electric selling massive industrial equipment, you see this emphasis on a detailed needs analysis.
Because those are huge investments.
They are, and they're long-term partnerships. So aggressive closing tactics just wouldn't work there. You need to build trust, understanding. It's about a shared journey.
Right. And on the flip side, we see companies who kind of miss this.
They do.
They hold on to those old methods and they stumble.
Exactly. So in the software world, you might see companies still leading with like a laundry list of features, a product data dump, without really understanding the specific problems their prospect is facing.
So the customer's left thinking, okay, but how does this solve my issue?
Exactly. They don't feel heard, they don't feel understood, and they're much less likely to buy. And you see smaller consulting firms sometimes offering those cookie-cutter solutions, those prepackaged answers, without doing the groundwork, without really understanding the client's unique context.
Yeah, it's like, here's the solution. It works for everyone.
Right, but in reality, it probably doesn't really address the root cause of the client's problem. And even in those industrial sales, you still see some suppliers who just focus on specs and price. Here's what it does, here's what it costs.
It's transactional.
It is, and they're completely missing those operational challenges that their clients face every single day. So they're not speaking the customer's language.
They're missing the connection. So for our listeners, how do they take this insight, this understanding of what truly drives success, and put it into practice?
Yeah, it really comes down to building a culture of curiosity, a culture of really listening to your customers.
Yeah.
Across your entire sales team, anyone who interacts with customers.
Right. Train them to be more curious.
Exactly. Train them to focus on that why. Why does the customer need this? What problems are they trying to solve? Before they even start thinking about the features and the solutions, it's a shift in mindset.
From like pushing a product to becoming like a trusted advisor.
Exactly. A partner, a guide. So for example, instead of, going into your next sales meeting and immediately launching into a product demo, try starting with questions about their biggest challenges, their goals, their aspirations.
It's keeping them up at night.
Exactly. And that shift in focus, that emphasis on understanding, it takes us to our next area, the power of the investigating stage.
Correct.
This is where you really roll up your sleeves and get deep into the customer's world.
Chapters 2 and 3 of Spin Selling really hit on this hard.
They do.
And the benefits for you, the listener, of having a really strong investigating stage are huge. First off, you uncover those true needs. You go beyond the surface level.
It's like peeling back the layers of an onion. You get to the core of what's really driving their decisions.
And you know what? By investing the time to do this, to really investigate, you're actually doing your customer a favor. You're helping them understand the magnitude of their own problems, which then increases the value they see in any solution you might propose.
Exactly. It's not about tricking them. It's about helping them see the full picture. And when they truly understand the problem, the solution becomes that much more valuable.
And along the way, you're building that trust, right?
You are. You're positioning yourself as a partner, someone who genuinely cares about their success, not just someone trying to make a quick sale.
Right. So let's talk about what happens if you don't invest in this stage. If you rush it, if you don't go deep enough, what's the potential fallout?
Well, you're running a big risk of misunderstanding what the customer really needs. And then you end up offering solutions that just don't quite hit the mark. And that leads to frustration for both sides.
Yes, the mark.
Yeah. And if the customer doesn't fully grasp the extent of their problem because you haven't helped them see it, they're much more likely to get hung up on price. They haven't seen the value yet.
They haven't felt the pain.
Exactly. And it can even lead to more objections later on when you finally present your solution because you haven't addressed those underlying concerns up front.
You're playing catch up.
You are, and it's not a good position to be in. So it's really worth looking at companies who do this well, companies who nail that investigating stage.
Let's look at some examples.
Okay, so in the enterprise software world, you have companies like SAP. They often use these really extensive discovery workshops where they spend a lot of time gathering detailed requirements from the client before they even start thinking about a customized solution.
It makes sense. Those are massive implementations.
Huge, complex systems. They need to get it right. And then you look at IT infrastructure, companies like Cisco. They invest heavily in understanding a client's current technology, their future plans, and any potential bottlenecks.
It's almost like a tech audit.
Yeah, a deep dive into their IT landscape. And only then do they recommend any network or hardware upgrades.
It's a very informed recommendation.
It is, because they've done their homework.
Yeah.
And then you have the financial services world, companies like Goldman Sachs. When they're advising clients, they conduct these incredibly thorough analyses of their financial goals, their risk tolerance, their current portfolio. It's all about understanding the client's unique situation before offering any advice.
They're tailoring it.
Exactly. Now, what about those companies who don't quite get it? What are they doing wrong?
You see them sometimes relying on those really generic questionnaires, the one-size-fits-all approach.
Yeah, the check-the-box discovery.
Exactly. And they miss all those nuances, all those little details that make each client unique.
Right. And then they try to shoehorn them into a standard solution. And in IT, you'll see some companies prematurely pushing a specific piece of hardware or software, this solution in search of a problem approach, without really understanding the client's existing systems or their long-term needs.
You need this, trust me.
Right. And the client's thinking, but why? How does this actually help me? And then in financial services, you see companies pushing those standard investment products, the off-the-shelf portfolio, without really understanding the client's goals or their risk profile.
Not personalized at all.
Not at all. And that can lead to some pretty bad outcomes. So the key takeaway here is that strong investigation is crucial. So for you, the listener, how can you strengthen your own investigating stage?
Well, you need to empower your sales team, anyone who's interacting with customers, to become expert investigators, almost like detectives.
Exactly. Give them the tools, the training, the mindset to really dig deep.
Teach them how to ask those insightful questions, the ones that get to the heart of the matter. And maybe even more important, teach them how to really listen, to actively listen, and understand the customer's perspective. It's not just about asking the questions, it's about absorbing the answers.
It is. It's about that empathy, that understanding.
And a practical tip.
Yeah.
Maybe develop some really detailed call guides with open-ended questions. Questions that can't just be answered with a yes or no.
That's a great idea. Get them thinking, get them talking.
And also train them to spot the difference between those implied needs, those problems the customer hints at, and those explicit needs, those clear statements of what they want or what they're missing. The goal is to move from those vague hints to concrete needs.
Exactly. And that leads us perfectly to the next topic, mastering the art of spin questions. This is where things get really interesting.
This is where the magic happens. Chapter 4 of Spin Selling really dives into the spin model, the situation, problem, implication, need-payoff questions.
Right.
And this model, it's all about strategically developing those initial problems, those little hints, into clear, acknowledged needs in the customer's mind.
It's about guiding them on a journey of self-discovery. They come to the realization themselves.
They own the problem. And for our listeners, mastering these spin questions, it can be a game changer, right?
Oh, absolutely. You become so much more effective at guiding the customer to articulate their needs in a way that makes sense to them.
They say it, not you.
Exactly. And those implication questions, those are critical for building that sense of urgency, that need to address the issue now. By helping the customer see the ripple effect of their problem, you're making a really compelling case for change without being pushy or aggressive.
It's about showing them the cost of inaction.
Exactly. And then you need payoff questions. Those are fantastic because they keep the focus squarely on the customer. You're prompting them to describe the benefits of solving the problem in their own words.
So the solution becomes theirs.
It does. It's no longer your solution, it's their solution.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about what happens if you don't master these types of questions. What are the potential pitfalls?
What's the downside?
Well, you might end up with just a surface level understanding of what the customer needs. You're identifying symptoms, but you're not getting to the root cause.
You're put on a Band-Aid.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but the underlying problem's still there. And then it becomes a lot harder to show the value of what you're offering because you haven't effectively highlighted those implications, that real cost of the problem.
This doesn't seem that important.
Right, because they haven't fully grasped the impact. And if they haven't articulated those benefits themselves through those need-payoff questions, they're not going to be as invested in the outcome. They're not going to be your internal champion.
They're not going to sell it for you.
Exactly. So let's look at some companies who really get this, who've mastered SBN questions.
Yeah, let's look at some examples.
Okay, so you have companies like IBM, those big technology solution providers. They often invest heavily in training their sales teams on how to use SBN questions effectively, especially when dealing with those complex business challenges.
Because their solutions are so broad.
Exactly. They need to be able to pinpoint the right solution for the right problem. And then you have healthcare technology companies like Epic Systems. Their whole sales process, when they're working with hospitals and healthcare networks, is built around really detailed questioning. They want to understand workflow bottlenecks, patient care challenges, those regulatory hurdles.
It's a very complex environment.
It is. They need to understand it inside and out. And then you have those HR software companies like Workday. They focus on those talent management challenges, those HR pain points, through really structured questioning.
Okay, so what are some of the mistakes you see from companies who haven't mastered this art?
Well, in tech, you see companies asking too many of those situation questions. They're gathering a lot of background information, but they're not really getting anywhere. Or they jump straight into the features before they even know if those features are relevant.
They're leading with the solution.
Yeah, before they even understand the problem. And then in healthcare tech, you see companies focusing too much on the technical specs of their software without really probing the impact of the current system on patient outcomes or the overall efficiency of the hospital.
It's about the bigger picture.
It is. And in HR software, you see companies presenting generic lists of benefits. Here's what our software does, but they never guide the client to articulate their specific needs or how those benefits would actually impact their unique challenges.
Not tailored at all.
No. So how can our listeners really master SESPIAN questions within their own organizations?
Well, it starts with training, right? You need to train your teams, not just on what the different types of CEFBN questions are, but on when and how to use them effectively.
It's about the art of conversation, not just reading from a script.
Exactly. Encourage them to plan ahead, to think strategically about the questions they want to ask before going into a meeting.
Yeah, be prepared.
And coach them on that skill of transforming those implied needs into explicit needs using those problem and implication questions.
Help them connect the dots.
And then really guide them on the power of those need-payoff questions to get the customer to articulate the value proposition in their own words.
But it's their idea.
They own it. For example, instead of saying, our software is super fast, maybe ask, how does your current slow data processing impact your team's ability to respond to customer inquiries in a timely manner?
Exactly. That's so much more powerful. You're framing it in terms of their pain point, their challenge.
And that takes us to our next point, demonstrating your capability the right way so it resonates with the customer.
Right. So chapter 5 of Spin Selling, it shifts the focus to how you effectively present your solutions, your capabilities, once you understand the customer's needs. And it really challenges that traditional approach of just listing features.
It's not a product demo anymore.
It's not. It's about connecting those features to the customer's needs. The key here is to emphasize the benefits that directly address those explicit needs that you've uncovered through your questioning. And the book calls these Type B benefits.
Type B benefits.
Yeah, and it's important to distinguish between features, advantages, and these Type B benefits. So features, those are just the things your product does. It has this, it can do that. Advantages, those show how those features could be helpful in a general sense. But Type B benefits, those are laser focused on directly solving the customer's specific explicit needs, the ones they've told you about.
It's about tailoring it.
Exactly. And for you, the listener, demonstrating your capability in this targeted way, it has some major benefits. You're going to see much stronger buy-in from the customer because you're directly addressing the issues that they've said are important.
It's about relevance.
It is. And you're going to encounter fewer price objections because the conversation shifts from cost to value. They see how your solution directly solves their expensive problem.
They're getting a return on their investment.
Exactly. And it creates a much stronger value proposition overall because your solution feels customized, tailored to their specific situation.
It feels personal.
It does. Now, what happens if you don't do this well? What if you just stick with that old feature dump approach?
What's the downside?
Well, you're probably going to see a lot of glazed eyes.
Yeah, checked out customers.
Yeah, they're not going to see how what you're offering actually helps them. And if you jump the gun, if you present your solutions too early, before you really understand their needs, you're going to get hit with a lot of objections.
Because it feels like you're not listening.
Exactly. It feels like you're just trying to push your agenda, not solve their problems. And you miss that opportunity to show how your solution directly tackles those specific needs they've already highlighted.
So let's look at some companies who are doing this well, who are demonstrating their capability the right way.
Okay, so in the medical device world, you have companies like Medtronic. They don't just focus on the technical specs of their devices, they really focus on showing how those devices actually improve patient outcomes and address very specific medical challenges.
They're focused on the impact.
Exactly. And they do that by having really detailed conversations with healthcare professionals, understanding their needs, their challenges. And then in the world of logistics and supply chain, you have companies like FedEx Supply Chain. They're really good at tailoring their proposals to show how their services will solve those very specific logistical headaches that their clients are facing.
They're showing the solution in action, almost.
They are. They're saying, here's how we can help you fix this problem that you told us about. And then you have energy management companies like Schneider Electric. They focus on showing exactly how their solutions will reduce energy consumption and save their clients money based on a really thorough understanding of their current energy usage and their sustainability goals.
It's all about data.
It is. It's about showing them the numbers, the impact. Now, what about those companies who are missing the mark?
What are the common mistakes?
Well, in medical devices, you see some companies getting bogged down in those technical specs without really connecting those specs back to patient care or those specific needs that were discussed.
Too much jargon.
Too much jargon, not enough real-world impact. And in logistics, you see companies offering those generic service packages without really understanding the client's unique complexities or their pain points.
One size fits all.
Yeah, and it usually doesn't fit anyone very well. And then in energy management, you see companies just giving a standard list of features without tailoring their recommendations to the client's specific energy profile or their priorities.
Not personalized.
No. So how can our listeners improve how they demonstrate their capability?
Well, first step is training.
Right. Training is always key.
Train your teams to really understand the difference between those features, those advantages, and those type B benefits, the ones that directly address the customer's explicit needs.
Exactly. And make sure they understand that timing is critical. Don't present your solutions too early. Wait until you've done that thorough investigation and those explicit needs are crystal clear.
Needs first, solutions second.
Absolutely. And coach them to translate those features into concrete business outcomes for each specific customer.
Make it real for them.
Yeah. For example, instead of just saying, our software has advanced analytics, say something like, because our software has these advanced analytics capabilities, you'll be able to pinpoint those inefficiencies in your marketing spend and reduce your customer acquisition cost by 15%.
Show the impact.
Exactly. And that takes us to our next topic, which is all about proactively preventing objections.
Getting ahead of the curve.
Absolutely. Chapter 6 of Sping's Selling really emphasizes this idea that the best salespeople, they don't just react to objections, they actively work to prevent them in the first place.
They see them coming.
They do. And they do that by building that strong foundation of understanding and value before they even talk about a solution.
Beginning the groundwork.
Exactly. And what's really interesting is the book points out that many objections actually come from the seller's actions, not the customer's inherent resistance. Maybe they presented the solution too early. Maybe they didn't clearly establish the value. Maybe they just didn't understand the needs well enough.
It's self-inflicted.
Often it is. So for our listeners, what are the benefits of proactively preventing objections?
Well, first off, it just makes those sales conversations so much smoother. There's less friction, less resistance.
Right. It's a more collaborative, more enjoyable experience for everyone.
And because you're addressing those potential concerns up front, through that thorough need development process, your closing rates are going to go up. You've already addressed the roadblocks before they even appear.
And it builds trust. When you show the customer that you truly understand their concerns, they're much more likely to trust your recommendations.
You're on the same side.
Exactly. Now, what happens if you don't focus on this? What if you just wait for the objections to come?
What's the risk?
Well, you're going to face a lot more resistance, especially when it comes to price. If they don't see the value, they're going to focus on the cost.
It becomes a numbers game.
It does.
Yeah.
And every objection you have to handle, it just stretches out the sales cycle. You're spending time putting out fires instead of moving the deal forward.
Wasting time.
Wasting time, wasting energy. And ultimately, it impacts your win rates. If you're not addressing those underlying concerns, you're not going to close as many deals.
You're not getting to the heart of the matter.
Exactly. So let's look at some companies who are really good at preventing objections.
Who are the role models here?
Well, you have those high-value professional service providers like Accenture. They spend a lot of time upfront really understanding the client's challenges and working with them to co-create solutions. So it's a very collaborative process.
The partnership from the beginning.
Exactly. And because of that, they encounter fewer objections to their fees or their proposed strategies later on.
Because the clients bought in.
They're part of the process. And then you have complex equipment manufacturers like Caterpillar. They focus on demonstrating the long-term value and the return on investment of their equipment.
It's not just about the upfront costs.
It's not. They show the client how their equipment will save them money and increase their productivity over time. So they're addressing that price concern before it even comes up.
They're showing the bigger picture.
Exactly. And even in custom software development, the firms that really prioritize that detailed discovery and prototyping, they're essentially preventing objections before they arise. They're making sure the final product is aligned with the client's expectations, addressing those usability concerns early on.
They're getting feedback along the way.
They are. So they avoid those costly revisions and that customer dissatisfaction later on.
So what are some of the common mistakes you see from companies who don't prioritize this?
Well, sometimes service providers present those very generic proposals, the boilerplate templates, without really showing they understand the client's specific pain points.
It's like, here's what we do, take it or leave it.
Right. And then the client's thinking, but how does this actually help me? And equipment manufacturers, sometimes they focus too much on specs and price without really demonstrating those long-term cost savings or those productivity gains.
They're missing the value proposition.
They are. And software developers, sometimes they start building based on a very superficial understanding of what the client wants, and then they end up having to do a lot of rework and face a lot of objections when the final product isn't quite right.
They didn't do their homework.
Exactly. So for our listeners, how can they integrate this objection prevention into their sales process?
I think it really boils down to focusing on that need development, right? Using spin, using those questions to really understand the needs before you even start talking about solution.
Needs first, solutions second.
Exactly. And help your team understand that objections aren't just a natural part of the process. They're often a sign that you missed something, that a need wasn't fully developed, that a solution was presented too early.
It's a signal to go back, reassess, and dig deeper.
It's a learning opportunity.
It is. So by really understanding the customer's needs and building that strong value proposition up front, you can address those objections before they even have a chance to surface.
You're preventing the fire before it starts.
Exactly. And that focus on value creation takes us to our next topic, crafting those really effective sales call openings. It's about making those first few minutes count.
First impressions matter.
They really do. Chapter 7 of Spin Selling really dives into this, and it challenges some of those traditional approaches, especially for those larger, more complex sales.
What did they say?
Well, the research suggests that in those bigger deals, those long, drawn-out introductions or those attempts to build rapport, they're not as effective as you might think. Those senior executives, those busy decision makers, they want you to get to the point.
They value their time.
They do. They want to know why you're there, what value you can offer. So for listeners, what are the benefits of having a really strong sales call opening?
Well, first off, you get the customer's buy-in right away. They're willing to engage. They're willing to answer your questions.
They're giving you permission to proceed.
Exactly. And it sets the tone for a much more professional, business-focused conversation. You're showing them that you respect their time, that you're there to talk business.
And it leads to a much more efficient use of that meeting time. You can get right to the heart of the matter, those needs, those challenges.
So what happens if you don't have a strong opening? What if you fumble those first few minutes?
Well, you risk losing the customer's attention right from the start. If you're rambling on about irrelevant things, they're going to tune out.
They're checking their email.
Exactly. They're thinking about their next meeting. And if you don't clearly establish the purpose of the call, why you're there, what you want to achieve, they're going to be hesitant to give you any meaningful information.
I'm going to hold back.
Yeah, because they don't know why they should open up. And ultimately, you're just wasting time, valuable time that you could be spending on understanding their needs and presenting your solutions.
So let's look at some companies that do this well, that have really nailed those effective openings.
Okay, so you see a lot of those leading B2B organizations across different industries. They're really training their teams to have concise, focused openings.
That's the point.
Exactly. State your purpose, the value you can offer right from the start. And then in technology sales, you see reps acknowledging the customer's time constraints right away. No, I know you're busy, so let's get straight to it.
They're showing respect.
Yeah.
Expert speaker. Welcome back to the Deep Dive, everybody. Today, we're diving headfirst into the world of sales. Specifically, what really drives success when it comes to engaging with those customers. And for this deep dive, we're breaking down a classic, really, spin selling, which, it's been around for a while, but this framework's really all about asking the right questions the right way to kind of unlock those sales wins. So our goal today is to kind of pull out the core practical insights from spin selling, things you can actually use right away to boost your business, to boost your sales.
Yeah, exactly. We're going to kind of debunk some of those old school sales myths, like that super aggressive closing is everything. We've looked at the data, and spin selling shows us a much smarter approach. It's all about really getting a deep understanding of what your customer wants, what their needs are.
So I guess to kind of map out our conversation, we've pulled out 7 key areas from the spin selling methodology.
Sounds good.
So number 1, we're going to look at what truly drives sales success. Number 2, the power of the investigating stage, really understanding the customer's world. Number 3, how to actually master those espion questions. The situation, the problem, the implication, the need-payoff questions.
Right.
Then we'll move into demonstrating your capability the right way so it resonates.
Okay.
Proactively preventing objections, because no one likes those.
No.
Then how to craft those super effective sales calls